Hey kids, today we're working with a Echo PB 250LN. Let's adjust the camera so you can see what I'm doing. This is a handheld leaf blower, two-stroke motor on it. The owner wants to change out the carburetor, so we're going to do it. We're going to get right to it. The first thing that we need to do is to loosen this wing nut. Let's go to the left. That's counterclockwise. And take this air box off. When we take the air box off, we're going to capture the air cleaner. Remember that nub, that washer housing, goes in the front. Just remember that and life will be good. We're going to set this aside because the new carburetor comes with the air cleaner with it. It does not come with the air box, so we have to save that. Next, we're going to do these two star head screws. We're going to take those right off. Let me zoom in a little better here so you see better. How about that? Okay, and adjust the camera accordingly. Yep. So let's take these star head screws right off. I like to break them with the handheld screwdriver, and then I'm going to use my cordless drill with the star head screw head on it. Just because they're 1.5 inches long, and it saves a lot of time and energy. Oh. There we go. So now we got to capture the washers as they come down, and we take this off. And I just inadvertently dropped one. I was looking at the camera. So this back washer, I said washer. Gasket needs to come off. Now we're going to take the front air box off and let the carburetor hang, and there is no gasket. It's missing a gasket. This air box will keep in a pile here ready to put it back together. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to take this ball, it's the throttle cable, and we're going to take it off the cable linkage. So it just goes up and around the cable linkage. Let's take this throttle cable off. To do so can be cumbersome sometimes, but normally if you just push that wire through, just like that, feed it right up through, and now grab it with your fingers and pop it off, and now fish it through this brass hollow bowl. It's basically a housing for the throttle cable, and we're going to need to put that right back on the new carburetor once we get that in our hands. So next thing we got to do is take off these fuel lines. The front one is the return line. The back one is the fuel line to the carburetor. And the way to tell one is bigger than the other, I noticed that these two fuel lines are basically the same size, so that doesn't really help you. You just got to remember and these are set up correctly. They don't have to crisscross. So front is in the front, back is in the back. Okay, so let's set our carburetor. This is what we're replacing, this carburetor unit, and we're replacing. It comes with, get this, you buy this brand new carburetor. Comes with 4 primer bulbs. It comes also with gas lines and gas filters, gaskets, air filter, spark plug, and to top it off, you get your adjustment screwdriver. It is a slotted flathead screwdriver, very much like the size of a eyeglass repair screwdriver. Okay, so now let's put this thing back together. Like I said, the first thing we're going to do is fish this throttle cable through. It can only go in one way. The small end goes inside. You have to help fish it maybe with a screwdriver like I did with that new one that you get. Now, there's no real trick to this except that you take your slot on your brass fitting here that this goes into, and have it facing in between this carburetor nut and this plastic housing. So you have room to fish your carburetor throttle through, the throttle cable. So here we go. And it is hard when you have gloves on, of course, So you might have to work it, and it's probably very hard for you to see what I'm doing here. But we set this throttle cable through, and now once you get it in, put your finger on the top and pull it through, and it should catch. There it goes. Now she's going to catch in there. Now you see that it's not seated in there. So now I just turn the brass housing up until it goes in, and she should set right in there halfway, just like that. Okay. Our next step is to put on our gas lines, put the big one on the back, the gas line itself, primary line, goes in first just because it's easier to do. Put that in till she's all the way to the top. This is a return line on the front. Put that in all the way to the top so she's not sucking any air. Our next feat is to feed this carburetor cable into the throttle linkage, the throttle cable into the throttle linkage, and just hope that you don't lose it. If you do, you can fish it through, and hopefully we can do it successfully without having to do so. Our next trick is to put our proper gasket in place, and so this one here has a little hole in it. So let's take a look at the gasket itself. See that little hole? That's going to actually go like this, because on this side you'll see that there's a little hole port right there for it. So if you have to clean things out, you'll be able to see it right away. So we'll take it and put it on these threaded bolts, the star head bolts, and put it all the way down so she's flush on the air box. And now we feed it through. Oops, let's not lose. Let's try to keep everything in place here. So you got to do a juggling act, because reason I'm having difficulty is I'm still trying to keep this ball in the throttle linkage assembly here. Okay, so now we put our brand new gasket in, and see it's shaped like a house, and the peak of the house is going to go on the top. So we just feed that onto those lines. And so now we got to just delicately put our threaded bolts, our star head screws or bolts, in place in the intake, and we'll get them started. And once they're started, we can use our cordless carefully. So when you put this on and you're using a cordless, you want to make sure that she doesn't get kittywampus on you sideways, so you end up stripping something out. So be cautious as you tighten it. Go nice and slow, and hopefully everything draws in evenly, just like that. So now let's go to the other one. Nice. Yep. Looks like she wants to go sideways. There we go. She's going in. And I like to finish it off by hand, because that's a plastic housing on the intake. The intake is actually plastic, or a resin fiber. So we don't want to strip it. We don't want to tighten these up so much where she just starts spinning in that plastic housing, because once that's done, then you got to buy a new one. Our goal is to fix this as cheap as possible. So our next trick now is to put on our air cleaner. Remember that this goes on the inside, this nub, whatever you want to call it. It's basically like a rubber washer that's permanent. And on the side here, how to know how to put this back on is your choke directions, okay? So this side will go, of course, on the choke side, and then you know that you're in the right, you're putting on the air box in the right manner. Okay, now I'm going to put it on choke. I'm going to hit that primer ball. And by the way, my prognosis really wasn't a new carburetor. It was that primer ball, because this primer ball, if we can do this without it, pushes in but really returns really, really slow. So it's lost its tensile strength, so its elasticity won't bounce back like it should. So he could have easily just changed the primer bulb, and that carburetor should have worked. But this is what he wanted, so that's what we're doing. So now I'm going to take my slotted screwdriver, I'm going to start this, and I'm going to take my slotted screwdriver, and let me show you where to do it, because you're not going to see me actually do it, you're going to hear me do it. So right here, underneath the primer bulb, is this opening, and in that opening is a small slotted brass screw. That's your adjustment screw. There is no L, there is no H, it's just the one and only screw for this. And so here we go. We're going to choke it, make sure she's on. Your on and off switch goes to the forward position, and now we're going to start it. And let's go over safety. These are not super loud, but they can affect your hearing. This is about approximately 60-65 decibels maxed out, so it's not super loud. So it's not going to get really crazy on you, but I still recommend hearing protection. And while you're running your leaf blower, these are great because they have an AM/FM radio in them, and you can hook up your MP3 player and not hear anything outside it. The other thing is your room. Make sure it's ventilated. I got my windows open. It's a very nice day out, so make sure you have more oxygen than you do carbon monoxide, because these fill up a room very fast, and we don't want you to get any carbon monoxide poisoning or just carbon monoxide death. We don't want that to happen. So here we go. So it's going to get loud for a second, and my camera has a tendency to shut off with loud noises. So hopefully this video will turn out right. If not, you'll see a glitch in the video. But hopefully she'll start up and we'll get her running. Fire in the hole, people. Fire in the hole. Synopsis. I turned it to the right, and I did that to the right till she weakened or lessened on the RPMs, and then I went to the right. I went and maxed out the RPMs to the right, and I maxed out the RPMs to the left, and I met that happy medium, so where she's running at the maximum RPMs right now. So remember, safety first, always ventilate your area when you're running machinery, or try to do it outside, and hearing protection. And if you have a tendency to like these videos, feel free to share them, and you may consider subscribing. Hey, appreciate your participation. Be safe.